My younger daughter, that one is like my twin. In 2017, we went to a soccer tournament, and in a game, she was absolutely drilled by a girl on a dirty play. She cracked her head. It was traumatic. Definitely the hardest challenge for my wife and I was seeing her suffering like that and not be able to help her. You know, I've always been a family first person, but going through that, definitely family was a priority. My dad's the most resilient person I've ever seen in my entire life. Because of my mom's brain infections, it affected her motor skills. So she was in a wheelchair for the last 9 years of her life. He had to carry her from the bed to the chair. He had 4 hernia surgeries. He had bladder cancer, his bladder removed, all during this time that he was still caring for her. He was her sole caregiver. My older daughter was one that had a very hard time with change. But one of the reasons she went to Gonzaga was to try to break out of that comfort zone. She experienced a lot of microaggressions, but she had tremendous personal growth from there. She was highly involved with the chancellor of the university to try to improve the culture for people like her or for people that may not be the typical Gonzaga student of the past. My mom passed away 3 years ago. Even if she had dementia, she knew who we all were. And I remember just looking at her towards the end and just telling her, "Mom, it's okay. We got Dad. You don't have to keep hanging on." And just seeing that in her eyes, understanding me but unable to speak, was something that will always stay with me, because you could see the tears of her acknowledging what was being said. I'm not sure I want to retire. I would have to have something else that keeps me engaged, keeps me excited, wanting to do things or helping people. I need that feeling of contributing, trying to do challenges. To me, that's how you stay young as well.
Greater Good Radio, Connect, Learn, Heal, and Grow is brought to you by Brain Gain Hawaii, a boutique executive recruiting, career development, and coaching firm. Learn more at braingainhi.com. Welcome to Greater Good Radio. Today we're here with Monty Pereira, my longtime friend and the GM and head of sales and marketing at Watanabe Floral. Thank you, Monty.
All right. Glad to be here, Evan. It's been a long time.
I mean, think about it. Like when we met was 94?
Yeah.
1994?
But 31 years ago.
31 years ago and well over 31 pounds for me. That's crazy.
Yeah, I did hit. It's amazing how long it's been already since back in those days.
I know. And it was talking about your kids. Your kids are now fully grown and out and doing their own thing. So your oldest is a lawyer, you said, huh?
Yes, she's an attorney in Seattle now with a nonprofit focus. You know, her passion has always been taking care of underserved and underprivileged communities, and that's what she's doing
Why?
now. You know, in going to Kamehameha, that one especially is very passionate about Hawaiian and Hawaiian culture. So eventually she does want to come home and dedicate her life to that. But I think from there and from seeing, you know, some of the people that she knew of and their struggles in Waianae, et cetera, it just created a foundation for her to want to do that.
Is that where you guys raised her, Waianae side?
No,
or?
I mean, but there were so many of her friends and stuff that came. There's a huge Kamehameha, you know, about 30% come from that side, west side. So she knew a lot of people and then hear stories. And she also took 5 years of Hawaiian language there, you know, so she has just this real passion for the Hawaiian culture. And so much of the Hawaiian culture is embedded in giving and loving and taking care of people. So that's always stuck with her. And so that's what she's doing in Seattle right now. And eventually she'll come home.
So you're Hawaiian?
Yes. My wife and I are both Hawaiian.
Did you go Kamehameha?
I didn't go to Kamehameha because I'm born and raised in Hilo, and that was before the Ke'au campus. And I did not want to come and dorm and board, you know, in 7th grade.
So you went Hilo High?
Hilo High. I'm a Hilo High graduate.
Oh, wow. What year are you?
87.
Oh, 87. That's like around Rabbi Opa. You know Rabbi Opa?
Yeah, the Iopa family, yeah.
I don't know if he went Hilo High, but wow. That's it. Do you know Darren Kimura? I don't know if he went to Hilo High though, but yeah, he's around 90, 91.
Yeah, that would be like my sister. I have 2 younger sisters. One was a 90 and one was a 92.
So what is your Hawaiian name?
Kuakini, like the hospital. Yeah.
What's the meaning of Kuakini?
My parents, I'm the oldest, so from their mindset, it was more along the lines of somebody that has, you know, leadership, somebody that has that type of ability or aspirations. That's kind of what they decided to name me.
Do you know what the actual meaning?
I don't know off the top of my head what the exact meaning is. No.
Oh, I wish I would
My
have.
daughter would.
Oh, yeah? How did you name your daughter?
We let the grandparents do that. The things that have connections to family. So my older daughter is Kealohilani, and then my younger daughter is Anuhea. And those are both given, those had significance to the grandparents.
So, can you share what is the significance?
There's family ties. It's not necessarily the direct meanings, I think, weren't translated exactly. It is more significance to family members in the past.
Paying homage to your ancestry.
Yes, definitely. That's very important in the Hawaiian culture.
And then you find that the girls have similar characteristics then to those ancestors, or no?
Again, I think there's a difference. Oftentimes with kids, they become different. Even if I have two girls, my older one is very culturally based. And I think that goes into why she took 5 years of Hawaiian language. And the more Hawaiian language you take, the more ingrained you get in everything Hawaiian culture. The younger one was much more personality, talk story, did the minimal part. So she doesn't have quite the same appreciation or fascination with the Hawaiian culture, but she still, values many of the things that, Hawaiians stand for.
Oh, interesting. So do you have a story from your lineage that would give me or us a better idea of kind of who you are today?
That's a very interesting question. On my wife's side of the family, they grew up with much more of a cultural mindset. And I think that's where it came from. And my wife is a Kamehameha graduate. Wow. For me, I had one grandfather who was 3/4 Hawaiian and 1/4 English. Bright. I'm actually a Bright, even if my last name is Pereira. So my other three grandparents were pure Portuguese. So I'm mostly Portuguese. So all of the Hawaiian came from him. But when he was raising my mom, who was the baby of 10 kids, it was at a time when he was adamant that we have to adapt to the new Hawaii, the non-Hawaiian Hawaii. So although he was fluent in Hawaii, he never spoke Hawaiian within his family to his kids. He put them in English grammar schools to try to make sure that they can succeed in the culture, the arena that they were growing up in. So I think that part is a little disappointing because he was passionate. As he grew older, he had dementia and Alzheimer's at the end. He would revert back to that. So he's speaking Hawaiian and nobody could understand him. So that was a little disappointing. So at that time that he was going through his Alzheimer's was the time that I was entering college. So I took, 2 years of Hawaiian to try to be able to learn enough to understand some of the things that he was saying. But on my wife's side of the family, I think they're much more embedded in things that are Hawaiian in terms of specific stories. I don't have really a specific one, but they try to this day, they try to really live that Hawaiian-ness.
What's your fondest memory with him?
Growing up, I was really close to my grandparents. That's my mom's dad. And they were much older already, when I was growing up. But every morning I would go to their house and he would take me to school until he couldn't drive anymore. And during the summers, I would go to their house and I would sleep over at their house. And he would work in the yard every day. They had a nice property in Hilo. And he would buy me all matching stuff. So I had my hard hat. I had my own little rake, my own little scooper thing. And we would just spend a lot of time together. As gruff as he was, and hearing my uncles and aunties speak about him and how strict he was and how he ruled with an iron fist type of a situation, he wasn't that way with me. With me, he would spoil me. We'd go to a store, he would take out his wallet and just open it up and get whatever you want. And when I would go home and tell my mom that, she'd be like, who is he? I mean, that's not the dad that we grew up with. Very loving, but very strict and rigid was how he treated his kids. But I wasn't treated the same way. And that's something that I'll always remember.
So you grew up on Big Island then?
Yep.
And then what was something that in your childhood that would give us context into who you are today? Like something meaningful?
I grew up as a big boy. I mean, I was pretty big. At second grade, I was already 120 pounds. So I was the one that in PE class, when you have to race, you want to partner with me. Or growing up playing baseball, as good as of a hitter as I was, even if I hit the ball into the cane fields, I still wouldn't be able to get around the bases. I would stop at third, So I was a big boy. So I took a little bit of that heat, growing up. And I think that really stuck with me. It stuck with me how you never want to belittle someone. You never want to tease anyone. You want to make sure that you're elevating them. You want to make sure that, you're doing all you can to be a positive part of someone's life. And I think that goes all the way back to my youth because my parents were extremely loving. Like I said, I was surrounded by grandparents that were extremely loving. I come from a very close-knit family. But even with that, and I love my friends, but even my friends would tease me, So until I got into high school, between my 9th and 10th grade years, when I shot up 9 inches and I lost a lot of weight for basketball, and I played basketball in high school, I was a big boy, and I took some heat from that growing up. It was weird. I went from 5'1" to 5'10".
Gotta have stretch marks or something.
I don't.
No?
I mean, I really didn't. I just kind of shot up, and then I stopped. So after that big growth spurt, I didn't grow very much from that point on.
But then you leaned out from there?
Yeah, I did lean out, but then I was much more active. Growing up, baseball was my favorite sport, and you don't really run a lot, because I was a big boy. I was first base, pitcher, or catcher. But in basketball, you start running a lot more. And at Hilo High, everything is fast breaks. Everything is full court press. So you had to be in shape if you wanted to play. So you naturally kind of leaned out. As I grew, I think that helped as well. But just being as active as I was kept me lean from that point on.
So what made you move to Oahu versus
I came to
stay
the
up
University of Hawaii at Manoa. So growing up in Hilo, it's always raining and it's very slow. So as a teenager, you cannot wait to get out of there. I mean, I cannot wait to get out of there. But my parents were like, you know what? I'm not going to send you to Manoa for your freshman year. We're going to keep you at Hilo because you can take the same classes and we don't have to pay for that. Which was actually great because my 1 year in Hilo was probably my best college experience, more so than the 3 years up here.
Why?
Because it was smaller classes. So it felt like high school, but in college. So you had conversations with your professors. It still felt like high school.
And you still knew everybody.
You knew some people, but there were people that were coming in from other places, but you still had some familiarity with some people. And then when my first year here, it's like 200 people, 300 people in a class because you're still taking basic classes. As you get into your, third and fourth years and your areas of focus, then the classes shrink again. But I really enjoyed my first year there. But you cannot wait to get out of Hilo. And so when I got here, I was like, some of my friends, very, very few actually went back. The rest of us kind of stayed here or even moved to the mainland for whatever reason. So very, very few of my really, really close friends have actually gone back to Hilo. However, now I crave that, so I tell my wife, after being here for 35 years and living out in Kunia, which is where we live, and fighting the daily traffic, I'm like, man, when I go home to visit aunties and uncles, it's like, it's just so relaxing.
It's peaceful, yeah?
It's very peaceful. I would love to go back once we retire, but my wife is not really feeling Hilo. She's like, maybe Kamuela. I'm like, okay. So we'll see. We'll see where things go, when the girls come home.
Kamuela's way more expensive though, right?
It is because it's much smaller, but for her, that's where her family was. So her Hawaiian family, many of them are still in Kamuela on the Hawaiian homestead lands there. So there's a deeper connection. They used to always go to Kamuela, not to Hilo, not to Kona, but to Kamuela when they visited family. So there's a connection for her there. But either place would be okay with me. I just think at this point in time, it's just, you just go there and it's just exhale. And it's only going to get worse here, in terms of congestion, etc. I mean,
especially that side, right? I mean, they just keep building.
They keep building, and we'll see once it's finished.
Have you ridden that?
You know what? I haven't even ridden it, rode it yet. Yeah. People tell me it's such a beautiful ride, and there's like 3 people in there. So we need that to be a little bit more useful. So maybe once it goes to the airport or Middle Street, we'll give it a shot. Right now, it's just a tourist attraction.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see. So you think you might go back to Big Island?
I would love to. I mean, at this point in time, I would love to. My girls, especially the younger one, because the older one definitely wants to come home. She's the one that every few months she has to come home. She's got to jump in the ocean. She's got to get that salt water on her. She needs that. The younger one is like, I'm going where I can afford a house and I can live more comfortably. So she's a little bit different. But that one is like, when are you going to move here? Are you guys willing to move where I'm at? And first, I tell her, well, I got to know where you're going to settle, and then we'll see. I would be willing to do that, if there's grandkids, to be able to move. But my wife is very much ingrained in Hawaii. She would prefer to stay here and then just travel as needed. Go stay with them for 2-3 months. But my younger daughter's like, whoa. 2-3 months. You got to have your own place. Yeah. You're not staying with us for 3 months.
Oh, so they both married and everything?
They're not married yet. Oh. They both have significant others. I think both of them are getting to that point where they're thinking about it. Whether they get married anytime soon, we'll see.
Where did your oldest go to law school?
She went to law school in Seattle University, which is why she stayed there. So she did her undergrad at Gonzaga.
Wow, my wife went to Gonzaga too, undergrad and master's.
She went to Gonzaga for her undergrad. And then she went to Seattle University. And then my younger one went to Grand Canyon University and then stayed in Phoenix.
So the older one is probably going to come home pretty soon, though, you would think, huh?
Well, she has a ton of student loans. And so working in nonprofit, after 10 years, they'll forgive it. So not that she couldn't come home and work for a nonprofit, but her boyfriend right now is also a lawyer. They graduated together. He's in the public defender's office. So even that, gives you forgiveness, working in the public defender's office. And she's in nonprofit. So how soon they come back, we'll see. But the hindrance is in Washington, you take kind of a universal bar, which is good for most of the country, but it's not good for Hawaii.
Yeah.
And he's from, the Oakland area, so it's not good in California as well. So they'd have to retake, the bars here, which is not a big deal. They can go ahead and do that. But they were recently, when Hawaii announced that they were going to do where public defenders, even if you didn't pass the Hawaii bar, would be grandfathered in if you've passed the bar. They're like, wait a minute, maybe we can get there without having to take the bar again. So we'll see. That one will eventually come home. Whether she plays out the whole 10 years on the mainland before coming back, I'm not really sure.
Actually, that's pretty good because my brother's an attorney. My dad was an attorney. I have plenty of attorney friends. And the conversation is, especially for like my younger son who, is considering it or so on, is like, is this going to be a good route for you considering AI and so on? And kind of the consensus from them was, you're going to still need someone to train you. And a lot of the firms are not hiring the younger level associates because, AI can give us the equivalent of a second or third year associate. So why are we going to train in a smaller firm? Where are you going to get trained? Right. So that's something to think about. She's already going to be 10 years in, so she'll be experienced already.
Yeah.
Can hit the ground running.
Yeah, that one, I can't imagine that one not coming home. She would be a little lost, I think, if she stayed on the mainland for the rest of her life.
So, I know we're talking about the girls. What would be a story you could share with us about, let's say your older daughter first, that would give us a good context into who she is?
I think growing up, my older daughter was one that had a very hard time with change, so she would be one that every day when I took her to preschool or I took her to the sitter, she would cry, all the way up until second grade, she would be a crier, so it's always been a real challenge for her to adjust. And that always kind of stayed with her. She's very ambitious. She's very do the right thing. She always excelled academically. But one of the reasons she went to Gonzaga was to try to break out of that comfort zone. You just said, Carrie went there.
Sounds just like my wife.
And it's a situation where it was culture shock. Going from a Hawaiian high school where you took 5 years of Hawaiian that really teaches you, like it or not, the reality is they kind of teach you to be pro-Hawaii and anti-non-Hawaii. Let's just put it politically correct. So going to Gonzaga was a culture shock where 95% of the people are white.
And right on the border of Idaho is all the white supremacist guys.
Yes, exactly. There. So you're right on that Coeur d'Alene border. Yeah. A lot of that happened. So she experienced a lot of microaggressions where you go to the shopping center, and she gravitated towards Mexican people, Latino people. There's very few Hawaii people still at that time, and whatever she would, but they'd go to a shopping center, and then while they're there, the security's following them, like profiling them, a situation like that. So that was really uncomfortable, but she had tremendous personal growth from there. She became a much stronger person. So before she left in her senior year, she was highly involved with the chancellor of the university to try to improve the culture for people like her or for people that may not be the typical Gonzaga student of the past. So tremendous growth. And that's one of the reasons why she went to Seattle University, which is really known for their underserved, underprivileged type of law. So that's what attracted her to that. So yeah, I just think that how she was growing up, really, she recognized her weakness and she challenged herself by putting herself in a situation that was very uncomfortable. I would have to say in the 2.5 years that she was there, or the 3 years that she was there because of COVID, she had to come home and finish.
That's kind of bummer.
It was probably the 3 hardest years of her life. But those traits that she gathered, the resiliency, the learning how to advocate for yourself, to speak up, those things are going to stay with her forever.
And then how about for your younger daughter?
So my younger daughter, that one is like my twin. We're similar personalities. We're always smiling. We're more positive, more happy type people, very much people type people. But for her, I think the biggest life-changing event is, I coached them playing soccer from when she was 4 years old, all the way until she graduated. But in 2017, we went to a soccer tournament in Phoenix, and in a game, she was absolutely drilled by a girl on a dirty play. She cracked her head.
Like got tackled kind
The
of?
ball was already out of bounds, so she was just going to go to pick up the ball, and the girl just ran and just blasted her. So she fell and whiplashed back, hitting her head. Immediately, we knew, the training staff said, you got to take her to the hospital as soon as possible. So we did, and she had a very bad concussion. Then we flew back, after a couple of days, and she got worse. So this was in March of 2017, her freshman year of high school. She missed the remainder of that school year and the first 6 months of the next school year. She had to slowly be worked back into school with accommodation. She couldn't function. It was just, everything was blurry, constant headaches, couldn't concentrate, lost her cognitive abilities. We saw 14 doctors. It was very scary because you never know if it's going to come back. So they kept going from doctor to doctor to doctor. Eventually it came back, but that experience for her, again, built a sense of resiliency. Even if you're cloudy, you know what's going on. So how come I cannot read anymore? How come I cannot figure out this simple math problem anymore? So you start to really question yourself. And then to slowly come back from that, built a sense of, again, resilience that has turned her into the person that she is today. So now she'll tackle anything. Like I said, she's a big personality. She'll go as far as her personality will take her. And that's just how she wants it.
So did she have to redo the freshman year?
She did not have to redo the freshman year. They made the decision at the time that, her grades were so good that she was going to be okay, even if she couldn't do what was required for the last the last quarter. So they passed her. The first half of her sophomore year, though, it was a whole different ball game because it was all kinds of accommodations. So she wasn't doing necessarily the same things that everyone else was doing for that first semester. She had to do different things.
What year was that?
That was 2017.
Oh, so that's before COVID then.
It was before COVID. So she had to go to school part-time. She had to do some things after school. Certain things were waived that weren't really critical to the 4 years.
How was that for you and your wife going through something like that?
Oh, it was traumatic. I'm sure there are a lot of people that go through way worse things with their kids, but just not knowing or feeling that sense of defenseless, or just uselessness that you cannot really do anything.
It's like a hopeless, helpless.
Yeah, it felt very much that way. So I spent a lot of time with her because that whole time that she wasn't able to go to school, she'd come to work with me. So I had a cot in my office and she just would lie there.
She have headaches and all that?
She did. Still to this day, she has headaches. But slowly, once they started to address some of the physical issues, the whiplash part, they were treating her just for a concussion, but she also had whiplash injuries that once they started to treat that, it became much better. And then I have a chiropractor friend out in Wahiawa, and then he's a big believer in kinesiology tape. He knows the guy from Japan who created the kinesiology tape. And he said, let me try something with her because she had no sense of balance. She was always wobbling. So we went to him, and then he had her just lift up one leg, and she's all over the place. And then he taped her up. And then he said, do it again. And she immediately could do it. And it seemed as if that was the beginning of the nerves reconnecting to the brain that allowed her to not only get her balance back, but get all of her cognitive abilities back.
And how is it now?
She's fine. So from that point till, it took about 2 months and she was back playing soccer again, reluctantly
but
for my wife.
You kind of hit the ball and stuff.
We wouldn't stay
away from
we
that,
wouldn't
right?
let her. We wouldn't let her head the ball as much as possible. And the fact that I was her coach, I could really police her as much as possible.
You coached at Kamehameha?
Well, she didn't play at Kamehameha because once she had that injury, we didn't want her playing outside, because soccer at Kamehameha is almost like volleyball at Kamehameha. It's super ultra competitive. And we didn't want to put her in an environment where she can't tell the coach, I'm not using my head. I'm not going to head the ball. They'd be like, well, you cut anyway. So she never went back to playing at Kamehameha.
That's a good move.
Yeah. So it was we just did it on the side. And then at club soccer where I could police it. And if she tried to use her head, I would just take her out of the game. And then go from there. But fortunately, she seems to have all of her cognitive abilities, but now in the age of CTE, you just wonder, eventually we try to do everything we can, and she tries to do everything she can to keep her brain.
So what was the one memory from that time period for you personally that was like most meaningful for you, where you really learned about yourself?
I think it was just seeing what she was going through, and being like, man, because that one also has extreme allergies. So she's allergic to peanuts. She's allergic to shellfish, so we've been at the emergency room a number of times.
So at any point you're like, you don't know if she's going to just collapse and that's it, kind of almost, right?
Well, with that, yeah, because her allergies were severe. So when it reacts like that, you got to go straight. You got to use the EpiPen, or you got to go straight to the hospital. We never use the EpiPen because if you use the EpiPen, you got to go hospital anyway. Mm-hmm. So instead, we just went straight to the hospital every time. And then they would give her the epinephrine there, and then they'd be able to monitor her. So she's always dealt with a lot of things from a young age. And I think that helped prepare her for when the concussion came. But that whole experience, again, just seeing the suffering and not being able to do anything and not knowing what to do. Like when they have a cold or the flu, you kind of know that this is going to get better. You kind of know what steps you need to do. But with that, it was completely, there was nothing that we could do that we understood. So that's why we kept taking her to doctor to try to find the right way. But that was definitely the hardest challenge for my wife and I, was seeing her suffering like that and not be able to help her and just kind of waiting it through. And it took, everybody would say, oh, the concussion, a couple weeks from now, she should be back. And then it just got worse and worse. And then you start to worry, what's going on here? Why is it getting worse? Why isn't it getting better? Mm-hmm. I've always been a family first person, but going through that and having her with me at work, definitely family was a priority, and making sure that we did everything that we could to take care of her whenever she needed it. It was always the priority. And that just kind of reinforced that.
Were you the GM at that time?
Yeah, I was the GM and the head of marketing, but that was before COVID. So you're kind of not working from home. Yeah. If this had happened, like now or in the last 3 years, it'd be a little bit less of a transition. I could do a lot of my work from home and then kind of go from there. But it wasn't.
The technology wasn't even really there back
then,
right?
It really wasn't. So she had to come with me to work, and she had to stay there all day, just lying there on a cot. And then we'd slowly start to do the work that they wanted her to introduce.
Did that affect your work much, or
I don't see how it couldn't.
Yeah. How you do with that? Because other people, if they have stuff going on, I don't see how you hide it.
No, but I think that the good part about our work environment is that they're very understanding, so we have kids all around all the time, in today's day and age, some people can't afford babysitters, so they bring their kid to school. And if they're on our admin team where they have an office, we encourage that. So there was really no problem in that. But I think where it stepped in or came into play was all the doctor's appointments, so organizing meetings that I would handle with my team or with the executive team. Sometimes they'd have to be flexible to accommodate my schedule, but no one really questioned that. And I would always get my work done. So it never impacted my ability to do my job. It just may have been done over a longer period of time or a little bit differently, not traditional from, 8 to 4.
So during that time period where, you're pulled pretty thin, right? Where did you go to get support, or did you have support?
I think one of the things about me that I'm very grateful for is I don't necessarily need that kind of support as much as many others do. And let me kind of elaborate on that. No matter what tough thing comes up, I'm pretty good at letting it go or processing it in the right way. So I didn't necessarily need a whole lot of support. I had enough support at work.
You never felt like you was going to break at some point?
No, I never felt like that. I have a strong faith component as well. So as hard as it was to watch her go through this, I also had extreme faith that God was going to make it be okay. He was going to take care of it eventually. We just kept asking for it. Give us the right path, give us the right thing to do for her. I knew it was going to get better, but I just didn't know when. And I think that's what really helps me as well, is just that strong faith component where you always believe everything's going to work out. Everything happens for a reason. Why we're dealing with this, I don't know, but there's a reason why. Who knows? My daughter may be a concussion spokesperson at some point in time because of what she dealt through. I don't really know that, but I have that strong faith. Now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't get stressful at times. And my wife and I and our families are very, very supportive. And then, like I said, my work was very supportive. So I didn't find myself being dramatically overwhelmed where I needed to seek some kind of outside counsel.
And then if you had to answer like why this happened for you versus like why this happens to you, what would you say?
That's a very interesting question. I guess it's just all part of a, learning curve. How do you deal with things and why things happen to you? And, through our life, there are different challenges that we're going to have. And I think for that for me was my biggest challenge ever, because I wasn't in control. And when you're in control, you feel a lot better about overcoming challenges than when you're not in control. So maybe that was the lesson that I had to learn at the time, to release that control. You can't control this, have faith and strengthen that faith. And it did. I mean, it certainly did. As faith-based as I've always been, there's nothing quite like a traumatic experience to make you even be more faithful.
Yeah, to test it.
You can go either way. You can be like, why is this happening to me, and lose faith? Or you can be like, okay, God, there's a reason for this. Help me get through this and help me be stronger for it and help me learn how to help.
What happened to the other girl? Did she have any idea on the impact that hit? Like later on, was she apprised of anything?
I don't think so. I mean, that was a mainland team. We were playing in the Phoenix area at the time, ironically, which is what was really surprising, why she wanted to go back to school in that area. But a team from San Diego with a heavy Mexican influence. So at the time, because all the training staff had to run on the field, I think she realized that, she's hurt and she was taken away into a medical tent. And then they said, we're going to call the ambulance or you can just take her. And so we just took her instead. But there was no way of communicating with that team to let them know. But I can tell you, my wife and my older daughter and a lot of the parents that were there, it took everything in their power not to start some kind of an issue there. And even for me, I mean, to see your daughter be hit like that unnecessarily was something that really frustrated me. It took me the rest of the game to probably gain my composure.
That's a pretty short amount of time, actually.
Well, before the next game, so we took her to a hospital, and then once she was released from the hospital.
No, to gain your composure.
Yeah, because, your first instinct is to be paternal. Now, granted, this is another 13, 14-year-old girl.
Just wondering if she had any idea on that, because, that might be just her environment and she's used to, and then doesn't really know the impact.
That's my guess. You can tell kind of by just how the coach from their team would speak to them.
Like Cobra Kai.
Yeah, very much so. No, I think you're absolutely right. And, at that age, most times it's probably not the kid's fault. They may be the one doing the action. They may get frustrated, but very, I got to believe that a 13-year-old is not going to be vindictive enough to try to injure someone. But it doesn't mean that the culture for the team cannot be, we're going to play physical, we're going to hit them, we're going to intimidate them, those types of situations.
Well, I was just wondering that because just hypothetically thinking, if, someone's 13 years old, they do that, they're playing aggressive, and then they realize, oh, I really messed this. That could mess somebody up.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm hopeful that I think she realized that somebody was badly injured. And anytime it's the head, it's even more scary. So hopefully she realized that after the fact. But from that moment on, we had no communication with her or that team. And we never saw them anymore because we never played them again or saw them in any tournament we played at.
Yeah, that's why it's interesting, right? It's like, what is the lesson in this that I need to learn? And did I learn it?
Yeah, I mean, and to say you learned a lesson, I think, is never possible. You can learn parts of a lesson to me, but you're always learning.
Or at least enough that it's not going to repeat itself.
Yeah. Well, my wife would say that we didn't learn the right lesson, right? Because we let her play again.
That might not have been the lesson.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean,
for you.
Exactly. And even for her, to give her some of that leeway to be emboldened to make that decision, to say, you know what, that was the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life, but I'm not going to let it define me. I'm not going to let it stop me. This is where my friends are. This is what I love to do. I'm going to go back. I'm going to get back, even if it takes me a year. And it took her. I mean, from injury to playing again, it was over a full year, but she loved it. And she got a lot of her confidence from the sports and a lot of her camaraderie, her friendships and all of the things that team sports can teach you and create. She was still able to get. But there's no doubt she was afraid when she first started again. And we were terrified as parents to put her back out there again. But when all was said and done, I think it worked out okay. And I think she's better for it. And we're probably better parents for it as well. That's
a big deal. I remember in 9th grade, my son had gotten really, really sick too. He missed a whole bunch of school. He might have missed like half of it or something too. And it's like, I don't know what's going on. There's nothing like that to be like, Oh my God. Because you can't do anything. I mean, what are you going to do? You can go to a doctor, you can try to find a medical treatment, you can pray or so on. But realistically, it's not like you can bust out one scalpel and do something myself. That teaches a lot.
Yeah, because you're used to, and I was used to making the decisions and being the person that has a say in how things go, whether it be coaching or at Watanabe Floral or in my boards. I was chairman of almost all the boards that I was at. You're always in control. And this was a new experience where there was absolutely nothing I could do. There's nobody who I could know, or there's nothing that I could do to help. And I had to learn to be patient, and I had to learn to let go.
How are you doing with that? Learning to be patient and let go.
That was difficult at the time.
No.
I think I'm better, but you're going to have to ask those around me for confirmation.
Yeah. Where did you meet your wife? How'd you meet your wife?
The same place I met you. It was
at Equinox?
Yeah, it was through Equinox. Yeah.
Oh, you guys weren't together already?
No.
I thought you guys were together.
No, we met at Equinox. She was a teacher.
In the same group, or how did that work?
No, in different groups.
In Halava?
Yeah, in Halava. And then they went to do the Waipio office. She was part of the group.
And then you went Waipio?
I never went. I stayed in Halava. But then that was that whole time where Equinox started to go through their transition out.
Oh.
So once they went to Waipio, it wasn't too much longer before, Equinox started to have some legal challenges. But we definitely met. We met there. And then she went back to teaching. Well, she was a teacher. Then
So she's
stopped.
at the DOE or what?
She is now. So she was in the DOE in Kaneohe at Pu'ohala, and then she went to Mid-Pacific Institute, and she was there for 7 years. And then once my two daughters got into Kamehameha, then she went to Kamehameha.
Oh, wow.
And she was at Kamehameha for about 8 years before moving back into an administrative position at Mid-Pacific until 2 years ago. So now she's at Halau Kumana, not far from here, right at the
Is that a
base of
charter
Tatlin.
school, or what is that?
A Hawaiian charter school.
They speak immersion, or what
No,
is it?
They teach English, Hawaiian language, but they're not an immersion school, because my wife doesn't speak the language, but she's the po'o there now. She's the principal of this charter school. This is starting her 3rd year at that school. So it's been very rewarding because at the charter schools, you have a lot of the kids that cannot get into Kamehameha trying to get into these charter schools. So for her, it was kids that needed even more.
It's like outreach.
Yes, they need it even more than the Kamehameha kids. Because once you get into Kamehameha, the facilities are top notch.
Unreal. And your lunch is awesome.
Yeah,
your food is awesome.
So
your
it
streets
kind
are all
of distorts
nice.
the reality of what some of these kids are facing. So, she deals with, a lot of families that have broken homes. And so it's rewarding. It's challenging because you're not dealing with, all the well-behaved kids. Not everyone is well-behaved, but the impact that you can make on the kid is something that is very
That's an interesting
gratifying.
setting over there too, because so much, it's like
so
by the
imagine
stream
coming
and
from
everything.
Kamehameha and then Mid-Pacific and then going into that, which is all portables, portable facilities, literally just tucked away in the base of the
that
forest.
allows you to have much more community feeling, because you don't have a lot of the amenities, right? Like at Punahou School, I remember when it was Winnie units in the elementary. I don't know if you've ever been over there, but it's like there were these single like rectangular buildings all like lined up with I think we only had might have only had one bathroom. I can't remember. It might have been 2 bathrooms, but for like 4 grades or something like that. So at any given time, there's like hundreds of kids of different grades all over, and you all going to the bathroom together. Now when it's all separate and you have all these super fancy buildings and everything, I kind of feel like the mingling and the collisions and stuff like that, it's just not the same.
Yeah. So at their school, they do a great job. They start the day all together. So it's only a 7 to 12 school. And there's only about 150 total students.
So only younger elementary, or what is it?
It's just 7 to 12.
The grade is 7 to 12.
Yeah. So they're only middle school through high school. So depending on the class, maybe 15 to 20 kids per grade level, but they do everything together. So every day they start the day together. Every afternoon they end the day together. So there is that sense of community that you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's no cafeteria, so food has to be delivered in, and then they sit outside under a tent with wooden tables, and that's where they eat together. So from that perspective, a lot of times when your kids are 7th grade, you're trying to keep them away from the 11th and 12th graders. But over there, they're really good at teaching the older kids to protect them as if they're your brothers and sisters and to look out for them. And so they do a very good job of teaching that. So certainly you have a sense of community. Everything is done together.
I'm going to be interested to see whatever the result of that is in like 10, 20, 30 years or so on, because in the epidemic of like loneliness in people's lives, especially in these young young kids' lives is so high, right? Like this feeling of separation that, you take away your recess, you take away your arts, you take away your music, you take away the free time, you try to make them do only math, science, engineering, technology. And then you wonder, wait, how come they're feeling so alone and socially segregated?
In doing all those things, you're also reinforcing their want and need for technology in the first place, and pulls them even further back into being comfortable just being by themselves. Yeah. So, I mean, she loves it. And like I said, there's challenges everywhere, but the feeling of making a difference in kids' lives that really need somebody to mentor them and to help them get to that next level. So from a Hawaiian charter school, they've started, outreach with Manoa. So now these kids are taking A+ classes. They're taking college prep classes. They're starting college, just like any other public school or private school, they're getting access to that.
Can they do dual credits?
Yeah, that's what they're doing. Yeah, they're doing dual credits
So
now.
they can come out with associates, or they can come out with the health
Not
degree
yet
and so
quite
on?
the associates, but they can come out with
A trade?
Yeah, with credits. Not yet, but that is something that they're looking towards. Again, they're so small, so you kind of got to get a hui before somebody would be really interested in doing
To
something
me, I feel
along
like
those
that's such a good program where you can get the dual credits.
Oh, yeah.
College credit and high school credit for the same exact class.
Especially with
You
how
come out
expensive
ahead.
college is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
to
especially
get
if
a start.
if you don't like let's say you want to go into a trade. Like right now, I mean, I think apprentice plumber, day one is at something like 20 something bucks an hour, right? After 2,000 hours or something like that, they double that. I mean, that's a good job.
Yeah. And I think you're starting to see that. I mean, I don't want to speak for her, and I'm certainly not speaking for the DOE, but I think they're starting to have a realization because it's so hard. Like sometimes you try to schedule an appointment to fix your car for some kind of maintenance. You're like 2 months out because there's not enough mechanics.
Yep.
There's not enough people in the trade because for many years we're taught, right, growing up, you got to grow up, you got to go college, you got to get a degree. And for a whole generation, you've stopped telling them that it's okay to go into the trades. We need the trades.
That's going to switch right now because especially with the AI, that's going to switch right now.
Yeah.
I mean, switching right now.
Yeah.
The ROI doesn't make sense to me on a lot of the college stuff. I don't know. To me personally, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer that you have to do certain
Or
things.
if it's public university and you're in state.
Yeah.
But at $100,000 a year.
Because, stats show that most people, whatever your degree is in, you're not using it. So you can get education in many different forms, in many different ways. And I think it's important that they teach that at the high school level, at the middle school level, that it's okay to have this as your path. And you're not going to be looked down on if you don't go to college. There's different ways to skin a cow.
Yeah. Electrical, plumbing, welding, all that stuff. That's all good jobs.
Yeah. And by the time you would theoretically graduate from college, you're already 4 years into your trade. You're way ahead of the game. You start investing and putting things away.
Yep.
You may never catch up, even with a college degree.
Like my friends our age now, fire, police, plumbing, and so on, they're all retiring.
Yeah.
So now that your kids are kind of older, if you could go back and tell yourself when you first were having them some advice, what would you say?
Probably not to hover quite as much, especially with the first one. With your first one, you're so protective about everything and trying to insulate them and try to shield them from certain things. And I think one of the things that we learn is as much as you try to do that in the home, they're being exposed to it, in school and especially in social media once that became prevalent. So I think we probably would have learned that we'd have to put her out there a little bit more than we did.
What do you mean?
Just exposure to more stuff. Like we were very controlling in terms of their social lives, who they're friends with, and those types of things. I mean, you're always trying to put them in the right environment, right? With good families that have good values or similar values. But the good thing about Kamehameha is that there's all kinds of geographic.
So she went from kindergarten.
Yeah. Oh. Both of my girls did, from kindergarten. Yeah. We were blessed to get both of them in. But you start to see there's different demographics there. It's not like going to Mid-Pacific or to Punahou where you have, you may have different nationalities, but you have very similar demographics. At Kamehameha, it's all over the place. And so it was kind of shocking when she first went there, like, wait a minute, this is not what mommy and daddy taught me. This is not what we were doing. And then that's a hard adjustment when you're not prepared for it. So I think just being a little bit more not hovering is probably something that, and I think you naturally kind of do that as you have more kids and learning to find that balance. like in your situation, by the time you got to the last one, I'm sure it was a whole different ball
Yeah,
game.
tired
from the
already.
First. Yeah.
I'm old and tired.
Just do what you want.
I mean, when older ones they're always like, you gotta discipline her. And I don't really have to do nothing. You know what I mean? I'm tired. Yeah.
How come you let them do that? And
Yeah.
you let me do that. But
Yeah.
eventually when they grow up, they understand why.
Well, our age gap is kind of I mean, my oldest is almost 23 and then the youngest is 11. So probably hard to, the oldest had it the hardest.
Oh, of course.
That's just how it goes.
Yeah. I'm an oldest. I had it harder than my two sisters as well. And I just think that's the nature. As parents, you're just not sure. So you probably do things more strictly than you ordinarily would, or how you wanted your parents to treat you, right? Like as an older one, I was always treated differently than my two sisters. So when I became a parent, I was like, okay, I got to do what my mom
Like,
and
what do
dad
you
did.
mean?
Like what they were able to do at their ages, I wasn't able to do when I was their age.
Or
you
now.
know? So my sisters could go out longer or later. And again, in Hilo, that's all relative, right?
Yeah.
9:00, everything shuts down. So
What would you say is your fondest memory of growing up in Hilo?
definitely family. And I don't think you realize that until it's gone. Right. So even if I have family on Oahu, and I still are very close with the family that I have here on Oahu, it was different. It was every day going to grandma's house. Like I said, every morning, every afternoon, you start taking that for granted. Every Sunday, all of the extended family comes over, and we're talking 30, 40 people at grandma's house having lunch and just enjoying each other. And then I came here, and although I had an auntie and uncle that I spent a lot of time with, it was different. I didn't have quite that family structure, and I didn't realize how much I would miss it, because as a teen growing up, you're all about you and what you want to do and sports for me and those types of things. And as you get a little bit older, you start to really appreciate, man, I had a lot of time with grandma and grandpa before they left. And I spent so much time with my cousins and aunties and uncles. What a blessing to be able to do that. That would be probably what I miss the most, for me personally. And then, like I said, now I just miss that calmness that the Big Island provides, from an emotional standpoint. But me personally, I just miss all of that family being around.
So who in your family were you the closest with?
My grandmother was probably my closest grandparent, or the person that I was closest to. Because my mom was the youngest and I was kind of like one of the younger, my two sisters are the two youngest grandkids of all. So when I was born, my mom was only like 22, 23 years old. So she had just recently kind of left the house. So I became like the 11th kid to my grandma and my grandfather. So I was really close with them. I spent a ton of time with them. And that's probably why when my grandpa got older and he started to get Alzheimer's, he remembered me more than he did my mom and my aunties and uncles. I'm not sure why, but I think because I was there so much right before he kind of lost his memory. So when my grandmother had to go do, certain things like go to a senior center to do fun stuff, I would be the one that would watch my grandfather because he would listen to me. Or when it was time to take him to a care center so that my grandmother could do something. My auntie couldn't get him to leave the house. My mom couldn't, but he would come with me. Even that was just kind of special. As hard as it is to see your grandfather doing that, it was kind of special. But those two, but because he started to develop Alzheimer when I was still relatively young.
Like how young?
Probably when I was around 10 or so. It started just naturally. I think I became closer to my grandmother.
And you knew what was going on or not really?
You could tell, but you can't necessarily process it. So it's like, Grandpa, you just asked me that, so that's how it kind of starts, right? So you kind of get that irritation. But over time, when you start to see the real deterioration, then it's just really sad. You're not as frustrated anymore. You're certainly more patient because they're completely not in control of what it is that they're saying or doing. But yeah, I can tell. I was old enough to be able to process that. My younger sister, not so much. And she would be like, Grandma, you just asked me that. But she was 5 years younger than me. So it was harder for her to understand. I was fortunate I was a little bit older. But yeah, those two grandparents I was really, really close to.
So if you could only take one memory from that grandmother, everything else you would forget, what would that memory be?
How hard she and how committed she was to taking care of my grandfather. because you take a lot of heat.
Give me a moment that you witnessed that.
You know, when somebody has Alzheimer's, they treat the people closest to them the worst because you're their caretaker. You're restricting them on things that they want to do or they think they want to do. So the yelling, the throwing of hairbrushes, you know, those kinds of things.
That get abusive.
But not hitting, you know, never really hitting, because he started to lose his...
Well, he cannot move sometimes.
Yeah,
so what you gonna do?
He would walk very,
very
very slow. So you're very easy to dodge it. But it can be mentally very challenging to be constantly belittled or being accused of, you don't care about me, you're not trying to take care. But she never let it bother her. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'll always remember that was heartbreaking for me, because I was so close to her, is out of my 4 grandparents, that one, my grandfather had Alzheimer's. My dad's parents both had all kinds of chronic disease and cancers at the time. So I grew up with an Alzheimer's grandfather and 2 sickly grandparents. And my grandmother was always the healthiest one, that never anything noticeable. She died of a heart attack before everyone else because of the stress, I believe, of trying to care for my grandfather. But she never stopped. She didn't refuse to get help or put him in a home. She was going to take care of him because that was her job. And she did it in a very loving way, despite the challenges.
How much earlier did she pass than them?
So once my grandmother passed away, you know, this was in 1987. You know, she had a heart attack. She passed away in October. So we were forced to put my grandfather in a home at that point. And even if he had Alzheimer's, you kind of know. So he went into the home. 6 weeks later, he passed.
Oh.
You know, so both of them passed in 1987. My dad's parents lasted a little bit longer, despite their being sick. My grandfather on that side lived till he was 85 years old. And then my grandmother was much younger, although she died at 78, 79. That was about 8 years later.
So are your parents still alive?
My dad is still alive. My dad and my sisters live in Las Vegas.
Oh.
And their families are all on the mainland. You know, my dad retired from the post office in 2000. They up and moved immediately to Las Vegas. They just felt that their money was going to go a lot further up there, and they could drive to Disney and Grand Canyon and Utah. So they up and moved. My mom passed away 3 years ago. She didn't have Alzheimer's, but she did have forms of dementia related to a series of infections in the brain. So yeah, she passed away 3 years ago. So my dad's still around kicking, the most resilient person I've ever seen in my entire life. He's dealt with every disease. He's had 3 surgeries this year already, but he'll be here next week to visit.
Wait, how old is he?
He'll be 81 this year.
With your mom, then who was her caregiver?
My dad. Very much,
the whole time.
Very much like my grandmother. And it was even harder for my dad than even my grandmother. Because of my mom's brain infections, it affected her motor skills. So she was in a wheelchair for the last 8-9 years of her life. So he had to carry her from the bed to the chair, carry her to the toilet, carry her. And eventually he got some help to do the bathing and stuff. But for the rest of the day, he had to physically move her. So he had 4 hernia surgeries. He had bladder cancer, his bladder removed, all during this time that he was still caring for her. So it was quite remarkable. Then once she passed, and they found out all these heart issues, you know, that he's been dealing with. But he was her sole caregiver. He tried to put her in a home when it became physically too hard for him. And that lasted for less than 30 days, and he couldn't take it, pulled her out until she passed.
Then how long after that?
She passed about 11 months later.
Were you able to visit her much?
We did, you know, especially when the kids were younger, before they started all their activities and high school, we would go up multiple times a year, and they would come multiple times a year. But we always go to visit, you know, and still, you know, my wife and I went up and spent 10 days with him in June, and he flew down to see me in Phoenix, you know, a couple of weeks ago, and then he'll be here. When my mom went as wheelchair bound, they stopped traveling because it was too hard for him. And we didn't have the house set up to accommodate a wheelchair person. And my dad, it was just too difficult for him to try to take care of her. So it was up to us to try to go. But as your kids get older, it became a little bit more difficult. But certainly towards the end, I was going pretty consistently. Unfortunately, I was there when she passed, so I was able to be there with my dad.
Oh, you were there at the last.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, my mom just passed in November. It's a transition, for sure.
Now, granted, I think for me, I think my sisters had it harder because my sisters are up there and they're much more involved.
So they're caregiving.
Yeah, they're forced to, right? Even if as independent as my dad wants to be, sometimes you have to rely. kids.
At that age already, the parents, they think they're in charge still yet, and they're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the hard thing, is when you get some kind of responsibility, but you have no authority. It's a tough position to be in. They still think they can do it, and it's like, bro, you cannot do it.
Yeah.
You can't do
But
it.
that's one of the things that would frustrate my dad the most with my mom is she'd be like, I'm going to cook dinner. He's like, how you going to cook dinner? You cannot even get to the kitchen. But in her mind, she could. You know, I'm going to do that. I can do that. You don't have to take care of me. I can take care of myself. And then at certain points when your patience is thin, it'd be like, that's when you have you struggle a little bit.
So what would you say is the most meaningful memory you have with your mom?
My mom was my biggest fan to this day. I mean, my wife will tell you, she's like, man, no one was ever going to be good enough for me in my mom's eyes. So she was always involved. And the impact I think that had on me, like every school function, they were head of the PTA for the band. They were head of different things. They were always involved in anything that I did academically or athletically. That stuck with me because that's the kind of parent I wanted to be for my kids. And fortunately, my work allowed me to do that. So when my youngest was in preschool, I went on every field trip. I was, at every fair, even if it was during the workday, I had that flexibility to do that. By the time it came to my younger one, there were restrictions. So parents were not welcome as much, especially at Kamehameha. So that was a little bit different. But I could be a very active, hands-on parent because that was important to me, because I think that's the way you can shape your kids. One of the ways you can shape your kids to be the type of person you want is to be present in their lives and for them to know that they're important enough. Even if they take it for granted at that age, they want you around and then they don't want you around. But when they get older, they realize how much of an impact. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized how much I appreciated my mom being there all the time. My dad would be there as much as he could, but my mom's work gave her the flexibility to be able to be more present than my dad was. But both of them were highly engaged.
Take just one kind of snapshot in time. Like, this is your most meaningful, emotional moment with your mother. What would it be?
That's a tough question. I mean, I would probably think that it would be close towards the end. Even if she had dementia, she knew who we all were. And I remember just looking at her towards the end and just telling her, Mom, it's okay. We got Dad. Wendy and my sisters are fine. All your grandkids are grown up already. They're all out of high school. We're okay. You don't have to keep hanging on. And just seeing that in her eyes, understanding me, but unable to speak, was something that will always stay with me, because you could see the tears of her acknowledging what was being said, but not being able to communicate back to me other than to try and make like a kissing motion. So I think that'll stick with me because that's about as emotional, as personal, as vulnerable as you can possibly be when you're staring death in the eye and being able to tell someone it's okay, go, you don't have to be hanging on anymore. You could see the suffering. Mm-hmm. That's different. On a more positive side, I just think growing up, like I said, it's just, always being available. And we could do wrong. My parents are the type where if you did something wrong, they wouldn't go fight the teacher. Or the principal. It would be,
you gonna get it.
Yes, no matter what, because you must have done something, right? Mm-hmm. So we could do wrong. My dad always said, if you ever commit a crime, I will drop you off at the jail. I'm not going to bail you out. I will take you down, if you do something along those lines. But my mom was just extremely loving, just an extremely loving person. And that will always resonate with me.
What does she do for work?
She was an administrative manager at Mauna Loa Observatory. So not up in the mountain, but she kind of ran the office in downtown Hilo of all the scientists that go up to work on the mountain. And then my dad was a postmaster at the...
Oh, he was the postmaster.
Well, he was a mail carrier, then a supervisor, then the postmaster in the KL
That's probably
office.
a good retirement then.
Yeah. And they were able to retire. I mean, my dad retired right at 55, and my mom retired a little early at 53.
Think about it. It's like almost 30 years, kind.
Yeah. He was able to get in and get out early.
That's a good gig. You know, after we did Equinox, then you went to Watanabe. Is that where you went? Or
Well, I
the
was
whole
in
time?
public accounting, so I was an accountant. So even when I started Equinox, I was doing accounting, and then I left accounting.
Which firm were you at?
I
Deloitte?
was at 2 local firms, so
Oh.
I was at Shigeji Sato and then Francis Makia. And when I was with Francis Makia, then I went full-time into Equinox.
Did
And
you
so I
start
stopped.
in the like Deloitte or
No, I
those
didn't
guys?
start
No?
in any of the big 5 firms. I wanted a smaller local firm where you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of do everything. At the bigger firms, you kind of went into audit or you went into tax. At the smaller firms, you
Because
kind
you're
of
pretty talkative and stuff for an accountant.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
just
my
saying.
personality is
Yeah.
a little bit different.
Yeah. Kind of more marketing than accounting.
So
Yeah.
I left public accounting to do Equinox full time, and when that didn't pan out, then I went back into accounting at Watanabe Floral. So I went there as their
The
accountant.
controller.
Not even controller. They had a controller. I just went there as the accountant,
Mm-hmm.
and then, like you said, my personality is much more marketing, business management than
Yeah.
it is accounting. Tremendous knowledge to have because you got to be able to break down a P&L. So I eventually migrated away from accounting first as a commercial manager in charge of business accounts. And then I became...
Oh, so you didn't go like their controller, CFO or something. You went to the sales side.
Yeah. I went from accountant and I
interesting.
migrated over into the sales and marketing side and then eventually general manager. Yeah.
So you have a separate accounting now then?
Yes. So the same guy who hired me 29 years ago is still there.
How old
He's
is
in
he?
his mid 70s now.
Uh-huh.
He's going to be retiring soon, but he's still there. He's still the CFO. And then we've long ago hired another accountant.
So this is still family run?
It's still family owned, but there are 2 first generation sons that are there. One is the president and CEO still. The other is my director of purchasing. And then that one has a wife at our Waipahu store and his 2 sons. And that's it. That's the only family, Watanabe family, that's still there. The rest of
So
us...
it's not ESOP. It's still owned by the family.
No. ESOP is something that they were looking at and they still may do, but it's still exclusively family owned.
Oh, so does that mean the sons will take over then, or how does this work?
Yes. One of the 2 grandsons will take over. Yeah.
And then for you, I mean, your kids are out of the house and stuff. How much longer you stay at Watanabe?
I mean, that's a good question. Like my wife's counting the days before she can retire from the state, right? She has about 8 more years. And she's like, as soon as I'm done, you're done, right? And I'm like,
Because she got to hit the years or the age?
Well, the combined. Because she left for Kamehameha and Mid-Pac. She was gone for 15 years.
How much is she trying to make then? 25, 30?
She's trying to get to that combined 65. No, the combined 85, I think is what it is.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think at age 60, she'll have, or 65, she'll
Oh,
have
is that what it is? Come on, I was wondering. Okay,
Yeah, it's
55 and
combined
30
years of
then.
experience plus age has to be a certain thing. So, but I told her, I'm not sure I want to retire.
Yeah.
I would have to have something else that keeps me engaged, keeps me excited, wanting to do things or helping people. She goes, we can travel. I said, I know we can travel. We're not going to travel 365 days a year. You can only travel so much. I need that feeling of contributing, of trying to help, trying to do challenges. To me, that's how you stay young as well. So as long as I'm having fun, that's a hard question to answer. And the Watanabe family, I mean, Mr. Watanabe, before he passed away, was still working at 92. Mrs. Watanabe passed away last year at 106. My boss currently is in his mid 70s. I'm not sure when he's going to step away.
Seems
So-
like a pretty good place to work. I mean, you've been there a long time.
Yeah, I've been there for 29 years. They're a great family.
Yeah.
So initially when I went there, it was just a job and there was nice people. So you stay motivated. Over time, I've gotten to have an appreciation of what the industry means to people and how flowers can impact people. So I've started to get more involved at the national level. So, I'm now on the board of the National Society of American Florists. I was just added to that. I've just been sworn into the American Academy of Floriculture. So nationally, I'm getting a little bit more involved to try to advocate for Hawaii as much as possible, or to try to bring what others are doing to Hawaii.
Like what?
We know Hawaii is challenging, but in the floral culture, it's even more challenging because everything has to be flown here. So everything's
Expensive.
being grown for the most part in South America or Asia or even Australia. So the month of April when the tariffs initially came out was the most stressful month in my 29-year history at Watanabe Floral. More than COVID, because I think COVID, we're all in the same boat together. You just kind of didn't know what was going on.
When your daughter was sick.
Well, no, at work,
Oh,
my professional career, because at COVID, it became how do I get my people safe? How do we make sure that they're getting unemployment, and what can we take care of? And then, 6 months later, you kind of started to come out of that, and the financial help had started to flow in. So I think that wasn't as bad. Yep. But the tariff situation became so immediate, and it impacted us tremendously because most of the product is coming from Thailand and South America. So to have to redo pricing, to try to go to some of our bigger customers like a Costco and tell them we need to raise prices, they understand, but they don't just accept it. So you had to prove by flower what country it was originating from, what the tariff is, and to try to justify it and try to do this in a timely manner so that, you're not 6 weeks in tariffs, impacting straight to your cost of goods sold, and your margin is dropping.
How much was the tariff?
That's what happened. The tariffs initially were 10%, from certain places. Thailand was 36%.
Oh, that's
and
nuts.
Thailand is where you're getting most of your orchid lei product from, so that was right before graduation. So to try to deal with that was a challenge. Now that has come down to 19%, which is still a lot. And then some of the flower product has gone from 10 to 15, so that was a tough thing to navigate. In the floral industry, you kind of miss out on the month of May. It is 50% busier than any other month.
Because of Mother's Day?
Because it starts with May Day, then graduation, and Mother's Day, and Memorial Day.
Oh, that's when it happened?
One thing, yeah. So it happened in the beginning of April. So we had to make sure that all prices were in check by May 1st. In order for us to not, hemorrhage or just give away cash in a month that it's so critical to us. So we got it done, and they were more accommodating than they normally are because I think they were getting hit with these price request increases from everyone. So they kind of understood a little bit, although they never really accept it. But yeah, that was quite challenging.
And what's the outlook now for that?
At the conference that I was at, there was a lot of discussion about the impact of tariffs. And there's no doubt that it's having an impact. I mean, from just the disposable income that anyone has, but especially here in Hawaii, when you start to factor in flowers are not a necessity, there is certainly a concern that if this were to continue, there's a certain price that people are going to be like,
just priced out of the market.
Yeah, you just priced out of what they're willing to do. And then you have to be very, very niche. And for some that works, like you can cater to just, affluent crowd and be okay doing events. But that's not our business model. That's not what the Watanabe family sought out to do. They always wanted to be the affordable option for people. As much as we're capable of doing anything, they never want to lose that. And so you have to be aware, you have to be nimble. How can we flip this? How can we change things to make sure that people can still have flowers at a price that's affordable to them? So we'll see. I mean, I think eventually everything will settle in, but I don't know if we've seen the impact of the actual tariffs yet on the consumer, because so many people backstock things, on the cheap before the tariffs kicked in. So we'll see, but we're going to be nimble and we're going to be prepared for whatever comes our way.
This is hard because it's unsure, right? It's like today tariff, no more tariff tomorrow. Today delay. Like, what is going on around here?
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing is in Hawaii, there's so few flower growers left. That's how Watanabe Floral started. We were rose growers for 68 years. Oh. And then once South America took flight, so the logic of the tariff in that way of losing business to other countries and trying to bring it back to America, there's some logic to that. But the reality is there's nobody in America that wants to do this kind of work.
Yeah, who's going to do the work? Hard enough to get a plumber.
So many, many farms are closing down, and those that are trying. So because the local farms are closing down, you're even more reliant on this international marketplace of flowers, and that becomes more challenging. Like it was one thing when we're growing the flowers in Kamuela, put it on the plane, we sell it the next day. Oh yeah, we're in control of that. But now we've got to source, we've got to factor in, logistics and shipping, and it's a perishable product. So at least with fruits and vegetables, you put it on a barge, it's still fine. You can't put flowers on a barge.
Your shelf life is short, bro.
Yeah, you got to fly it in, then you have 5 to 6 days to move it.
What do you guys do with all the flowers that go bad then?
Charity.
Oh,
you never want to do it, but we have a list of charitable companies because we don't want to just throw it away. So we know that at a certain point, it's not really saleable anymore. We have a rescue flower section first, where if you want to come in and just pick up things for 50 cents, and for many people, they only need it for a day or two. They love that. But for the most part, we give it to, senior centers or women's prison where they can use it for activities. So we try to work with organizations that are using it to help engage people or to make a difference. If people that are unable to use it just have flowers in their home.
So what was the most meaningful thing for you that this Watanabe family did when you were having your problem with your child?
I don't think it was something that they necessarily did. It's
Oh.
what they allowed me to do. They never questioned anything or any time that I needed to be away from the office. Not once.
Mm-hmm.
They were always completely supportive. You do what you need to do. You take care of your family. You make sure that she's okay. That's the number one priority. They were always extremely understanding. So I never had to feel a sense of making a choice. Obviously, at Valentine's Day and at Mother's Day, my wife and I got to figure that out. I have to be there. But for the most part, beyond that, it was whatever doctor appointments, whenever I had to leave. But I'm also very good about making sure that I'm getting the job done. But they never questioned me, never made me feel like I had to make a choice or anything along those lines. They were just 100% completely supportive. And that's kind of why, I'm so loyal back to them, is that they've always been that way. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I was able to be at every single one of my kids' activities growing up. Not a lot of people can say that in the corporate world. You're oftentimes having to sacrifice your family for your job. And I was able to do both. And that's because of the culture that they allowed me to.
It's a big deal because I have discussions with people running companies quite a bit. And then it becomes, well, these younger kids, they're not loyal and so on. And like, hey, well, neither are you. What are you guaranteeing them? Not much, right? So I think it's a relationship that you value people and you show that in a meaningful way, then they tend to do the same.
Yeah. But I mean, there is truth to, like, the younger people have much less patience. I think at our generation, they're a little bit more patient.
Yeah, because we're Gen X.
Yeah.
We're the last generation that will suffer.
Yeah.
For really not a huge reason, right? We'll suffer. The boomers would suffer. We would take the abuse.
Yeah.
You go 2 more generations after that? Nah.
Yeah. So that's where you have to create that culture immediately, where people feel that what you kind of organically were to feel when we were growing up. Now you have to be ready for them so that their first 60 days, they're feeling that sense of family or whatever the culture is that you're trying to determine, so that they want to, maybe this one is worth, staying at. But
Well, I think some of it too is that there's so many options out there. I mean, realistically, if you're talking about an entry-level job, I can go drive an Uber and make pretty decent,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I saw on one of the like Uber Eats, one of those guys that are making like 100 grand.
Yeah.
You can just turn on your phone and get ready, and you got a vehicle or something, and you just go.
Yeah.
So many different options that people can do out there.
Yeah. And they can survive and they can work around their schedules. Yeah. They can do what they want when they want with options like Uber and similar things like that. So yeah, that becomes definitely a challenge. I mean, staffing is, since before COVID and exasperated by COVID, staffing has been the biggest challenge for our company.
But you find that you need less people because of technology and AI, or not really in your guys' business?
Not really in our industry yet. I think we are slowly moving into AI. But part of it is our facility as well. So on the mainland, there are certain facilities or certain types of distributing companies that have robotics that are fully in place. Our building at this point is not set up to have that kind of efficiencies. But we expect that AI will help to take away some of that burden, especially from our sales team and our guest service team and operationally our management team. But until they can find ways for a robot to design a flower arrangement, which is probably right around the corner, we're always going to need people. And the thing about our business, and our CEO has always said this from the very beginning, we're not in the flower business, we're in the feelings business. Flowers are often used most times to express some kind of emotion. Mm-hmm. Birthdays, anniversaries, get well soon, thank you, sympathy, weddings. You cannot AI that. Once you lose the feelings, you're going to be in trouble as an industry. And I think there's a realization in the floral industry that we got to use what we can, but you're never going to be able to take away that people part, because that's so important in the emotional level.
So with your 29 years over there, what's a story that you could share that was the most emotionally moving for you?
Honestly, I don't have one particular memory along those lines, but I think for me, it's always going to be sympathies.
Try to think of one.
I mean, okay, I don't remember the family's name because these are people that just email after the fact. But when they emailed and they sought out to email me, I'm not sure how they got my direct email, but they did, because they were so overwhelmed at the beauty of the funeral pieces that were made and how their loved one loved flowers and was so passionate about flowers their whole life. Not in the floral industry, but just always had flowers in the home and loved flowers. And for them, it was the most special way to honor their loved one was to be able to have beautiful flowers at their ceremony. So the email that I received, that you could feel and hear the emotion and the pain that they were feeling, but the appreciation for what we did for them. So that would be that one particular thing. And there's others like that, but I think that one was the most emotional. You could, like I said, you could feel their pain and how grateful that they were. A lot of people will say thank you. Our family was just so overwhelmed by things. But that particular thing was, my family member loved flowers, and this is exactly the way we wanted to say bye. And as hard as this was, everything that you guys did just made it a little bit more comforting. And I always believe that of all the flowers that we do, honoring somebody's loved one in a funeral is the biggest blessing that we have, because there's nothing quite like helping somebody say bye to a loved one. And we take that extremely seriously. Yeah, that's an honor to me.
I remember when we were doing, my brother, myself, Jeff Harris, Stacy Katakura, a number of us were doing these free webinars during COVID for PPP loans.
I was on a bunch of those.
Right?
Yep.
And it was over $1 million in pro bono that was done through that, giving basically free employment, legal advice, as well as the accounting stuff to make sure you can get because the dang PPP would change twice a day, right? And we had one person contact us in particular, and she said, I work for a service station. It's really just, I think it was maybe her, the boss, and maybe one other person. He doesn't speak English. And we're trying to figure this out, or we're going to go out of business. But I am caregiver for my kids, my mom, and I have like stage 3 cancer.
Oh, wow.
If I lose this job, I'm dead. I cannot afford this, and so on. I need help. And he said, because you guys helped me on this, I never would have been able to afford it. We got it, and I think this saved my life. It's like, something like that is like, oh, this is nuts.
It wasn't the intent of what you guys were doing. It was to help. It's like, what?
You know what I mean? It's like, you figure, okay, I can help broad spectrum quite a bit, but at that kind of like level is, wow. I would think that in your kind of business, you would see stuff like that kind of often.
I mean, you see that all the time with people that come in for sympathies, and you have to be, really compassionate when you do that. Or people with somebody in the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, you do. But again, that's one of the beauties of our industry that I never realized before I got there. I mean, flowers was just what...
Yeah, you're selling appreciation.
Yeah. When I went there, I mean, I grew up in Hilo where there's lots of tropical flowers and all the flower farms are there. And I went to the grave of my grandparents all the time, but I didn't have that appreciation until you see the impact it's having on people. So I think the ones from our team that see it the most are our drivers, because all day they're delivering stuff and you're seeing the reaction from people. And that's really motivating. And it makes you just feel good about what you're doing. And we get to do that day after day.
Wow. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you feel like you wanted to cover?
Not really off the top of my head. I mean, I just think the whole concept of Greater Good Radio is such a positive thing. I don't know if you watch Inspire You and Me. It's a TV show that's on K5, but I've done that 3 times because I just love any vehicle of people trying to share stories and trying to connect people and trying to make this place a better place. And so I'm very grateful that you extended an opportunity for me to come here and talk story.
Cool. Well, I just want to acknowledge you and appreciate you for, what's been like 30 years. I think we know each other, been friends. In the past, you've helped us out as well. And I know you're doing good work. So I appreciate it. And thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. If you resonate with Greater Good Radio, please join our community at www.greatergoodradio.com, where you can get access to exclusive content and offerings. Hope to see you soon.